Navy Matters.
Hello and welcome back to History Repeats. I'm your host, Liam Carballal. This is hmTv. Joining me once more is Richard Acritelli. How you doing, Rich?
Liam, how you doing?
It's good. Rich, last time we had you here, we had a new segment, History versus Hollywood, and I think we had a lot of fun with that one.
Sure,
so
yeah.
Let's keep it going. Got a short list of movies here. One of the first ones I would like to talk about, I even brought a little book to talk about it. We Were Soldiers, 2002 with Mel Gibson. It's a Vietnam War movie. It's about the first major engagement between U.S. forces during the Vietnam War in November 1965. I think you mentioned that you had a bit of a personal connection to that particular.
Yeah, there was a doctor, Dr. Frank Lunati. He wrote a book called Time Never Heals, and he was a combat surgeon, I believe, during that battle. And years ago, where I teach at Rocky Point High School, he actually did a slideshow of him like inoculating Vietnamese people, different tribal groups that were there, literally being out in these villages that were in the middle of nowhere, right?
The Vietnamese Highlands.
Yeah, and not being near any type of civilization. And he actually showed, I think it was a python that swallowed maybe an elk or something like that. And you could see it. You could see it, a snake just.
Really?
So it was like unbelievable because he showed so many different aspects of being in South Vietnam and the different parts of South Vietnam.
You kind of miss that sometimes. Like Vietnam is the wildlife.
Yeah, well,
I hear stories. There's just bugs. There's tigers,
snakes,
elephants.
Yeah, and you're in the field with them. You can't see your hand in front of your face.
Yeah.
And you also have the wildlife that's there as well, right?
Yeah.
So I believe he was there. He wrote this very powerful book, Time Never Heals, which means that it's still with the veteran being there. And the movie is based on Lieutenant Colonel, then also I guess he gets promoted at that time, Hal Moore, who I believe becomes a Lieutenant General down the road. And, there's fighting in Vietnam. It's going on, but it's the earlier part where now you have the escalation of the draft. You're getting more soldiers going over there. It's a little before Tet, but this is like the kind of the start of it.
This is 1965.
1965. So it's serious. It's after the Gulf of Tonkin, resolution in 1964. So America's now fully committed to the security of South Vietnam, right, with the domino effect and containment and all that, right? So I do believe the movie is accurate in terms of them being out in the field, the air cav bringing them in, the close air support, fighting at night, and the helicopters coming in, and they can see the Vietnamese lighting up their own paths.
Yeah, I think I remember reading that they went, like some of those guys went 60 hours without sleeping.
They just kept on going, and
that's insane.
At that point, I think they'd rather have ammo than food and water. But these are guys that are dehydrated. They're out in the field. They're constantly under fire. There's a lot fewer American soldiers, and the Vietnamese are just looking to overrun them. And the Americans are fighting within every direction. And then next to Hal Moore,
it wasn't unusual to be in like 15 yards away from the enemy.
Yeah, very close. As close as we are together.
Yeah.
And so Hal Moore, his second in charge was, I believe it was I don't know if he was a first sergeant or a command sergeant major. He might have been a sergeant major, who was played by Sam Elliott, who made all the combat jumps in World War II, the major jumps. And so you have the younger officer that's there who's going to later be in the service, and they'll be the older guys when it comes to the first Gulf War, because they're in uniform for a long, long time. And they're getting some of that advice from, NCOs, officers that kind of fought in a little bit of a different war itself. So it's a good movie. It really is. Is it 100% true? Most likely not. But it gets into the terrain, the tunnels, the Vietnamese looking to overwhelm them, the North Vietnamese army, the fact that they're in such close contact. And then your book, right? Your book that you have.
Yeah, I brought The Gun by C.J. Shivers. He doesn't mention it that much, but one thing he does mention, you don't really see it in the movie, is that was the first battle in history that saw the M16 being used. And while Commander Moore gave rave reviews to the M16 in the first engagement, the overlying theme of the later part of the book is just that the M16 was a deeply flawed weapon.
Yeah, it was not
part of Vietnam.
It was not an easy weapon to use. I used it probably 30 years later, from 1994 to 2003. So it would jam. You would do something called sports: slap, pull, observe, release, tap, squeeze.
Yeah,
and sometimes those steps didn't clear the rifle. And the AK-47 was made for the average fifth grader education in terms of the Soviet Union, because it's a mostly agricultural country. There's really no formal education at that point when it was made. And it's still going to be in the third world for years to come.
They're still using AK-47s that were made in the 50s in Afghanistan today.
Yeah, or they have the prototypes of it where they're just gonna make them. So that weapon definitely lasts. And you see the difference in the American soldier. I mean, those guys he was airborne, right? And
air cavalry.
Air cav. And so you see the difference in the technology that the Americans are able to bring on compared to the superior numbers that the NVA was able to throw in. And then while the Americans are weak, so is the NVA. And then the numbers start kind of coming down. And then the NVA realize we can kill the Americans, we can weaken them, but we might not destroy them completely. And with the helicopters bringing in more soldiers and more resources, that was an arm of the military where those helicopter pilots took a lot of fire, and the M60 gunners, and they went into harm's way where they were sitting ducks. And but I guess we use our technology, our air power, to our advantage to negate, the larger numbers of the enemy that seemed like was always around the Americans. Remember, there's really no front lines. In the movie, it shows you they're getting attacked from all different directions. There's a tunnel system. They're trying to run them during the day, at night, the next day. And the Americans are grabbing, rifles, seeing what ammo they can get, and so on. So the movie is, in fact, it's pretty good. Is it 100%? No, but it's not like some war movies or sports movies where they totally get it wrong.
You know what's interesting? The other thing too about the movie, I thought that kind of stood out to me. You never really see this in movies. It has like an Asian American soldier in it, and I remember seeing an interview with the guy, with the actual people involved in it, and that was true. That there was a Japanese American soldier who was killed during the engagement.
Remember,
napalm.
The military is a melting pot. I think we spoke about it with John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was a spoiled brat. He came from a lot of money, Harvard educated, but he went into service, and so did his brother. So they had all the benefits that you can have through the Kennedy family, which is pretty significant. And he was going through training with people that lived in the inner city or in the middle of the Adirondacks Mountains in upstate New York or in Appalachia somewhere. So it really is a melting pot, ethnic, race, religion, and also wealth. And I saw that in the service, and coming from a hardworking, middle class, blue collar family, I kind of understood the wealth part a little bit, but I understood the poor part a little bit being here on Long Island. So that's a very interesting point that you bring up. So,
sticking with that era, the late 60s, I would like to talk about two other movies. They're both about the civil rights era. Mississippi Burning and Remember the Titans. Very tonally different movies, but they follow similar subject matter.
Yeah, well, it's civil rights. It's civil rights right around the time that everything starts getting desegregated. So you got to remember, let's go to civil rights movement from 1865, right? At the end of the war, Grant wins the war, Lincoln wins the war, ends slavery. And then Reconstruction, and then you have desegregation from 1865 to 1965, right? It's still there today, but those are some of the key time periods. And really, from 1865 to 1945, it's very slow, right? When you look at end of World War II until 1965, that 20-year period, you're going to see major cracks within the foundation of segregation. What are those cracks? Desegregation of baseball with Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is told by Branch Rickey, give me 3 years. You have to take all the nonsense that's thrown at you for 3 years so I can get other teams to bring in more black ball players. And what does he do? He brings in Don Newcomb and Roy Campanella, right? So the Yankees and the Boston Red Sox were one of the last teams to integrate, which is interesting because they're northern teams, and that's why the Yankees were as bad as they were. The older players are getting old, and now you have the transition, and they're one of the last teams to integrate, right? So you have that. You have Brown versus Board of Education. You have Thurgood Marshall. You have the desegregation of the schools itself, right? So now Eisenhower doesn't like the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, but he enforces it. And he sends the troops in to enforce it, which is a very glaring thing within American society, right? Those troops will go into public schools to make sure that the black students have an entrance and an exit to go in and out, right?
Norman Rockefeller paintings.
It's
problem we all live with.
It's crazy, like I think Oprah had it years ago, where there's that just picture of the young girl, and you could just see the hatred spewing out of her, and then you see the black students coming in. They have their books, and then there's her in the background. So they actually brought the two of them together.
Really?
So it's crazy. It's just crazy, right? So when you look at Mississippi Burning, William Dafoe is probably, I would say, maybe a northern Midwest guy or a northeastern guy, and he's with Gene Hackman, who is from that area of Mississippi. He goes from being in the police department, he kind of works his way up, gets into the bureau, right? And there are two agents that look at the same thing very, very differently. And you see that in the beginning of the film, where Gene Hackman's character is going through the file that they have. And he's singing the song of the Ku Klux Klan. And, he goes, what has four eyes, but I think can't see? And it's Mississippi, right? So they're laughing, but they're laughing for two different, very different reasons. William Dafoe's character, very black and white. We're here to investigate, to find out what happened to these three civil rights activists. Two of them were white and one of them was black, right? The Klan is involved, the police is involved. They start kind of sniffing around that town, and you see the segregation right away. Even though things are supposed to be lightening up with the segregation, it's not in that small southern town. So now they go into a restaurant. You see that the blacks are at the counter, right? So now they're eating the same type of meal, but it's separate but equal, right? So 3/4 of the restaurant is tied to the whites. The smaller percentage is tied to the blacks, right? So he goes up to a young black man, starts asking him questions, and then right away everything goes quiet and they're looking. So when you look, remember like the voting, right?
Yeah, voting rights.
They go after a lot of the Republicans in the South because it was the solid South. It was Democratic, right?
Yeah.
The Republicans were the party of Lincoln. They win the war. They're looking to have change with the freedmen, right? It was still the same way in the 1960s, right? So you're looking at these people are looking at the blacks, and they're their neighbors. They know where they live. And then what ends up happening is later on in the film, the young black man gets thrown from a moving car. And Gene Hackman's character, I'm trying to remember his name, Gene Hackman's character says to William Dafoe's character, this will teach you not to speak to a black man in public where they know where he lives and so on. So very interesting movie. There was something, I saw the movie, I guess it came out in, I think it was 86, 87. I was about 12 or 13 years old. My parents took me to see the film, and they said it was that bad. So you got to remember, my father grew up a couple towns away from here in Roslyn, very talented basketball player, him and my uncle. And the best talent was in some of the black neighborhoods. And they played against those black ball players. Yeah. And even in the mid-1960s, you didn't sometimes do that sort of thing here on Long Island within the melting pot.
Yeah.
But if you look at my last name's Italian, and, you know, I guess my father and my uncle grew up with, you know, there was some resentment with the Italians, and, right? They understood that with the blacks. Yeah. You know, so they were very talented athletes. So I remember that being explained to me. Yeah. So Alan J. Pakula, who made the film, he ended up getting some brushback from, I believe it was the governor of Mississippi at that time. Really? And he comes out and says, there's a lot of inaccuracies in your film, and it wasn't that bad, and this and that.
Wasn't the flag in Mississippi still the Confederate
flag? Yeah, so
point?
It's crazy until really recent times, right? So Pakula goes, yeah, you're right. It was worse. We had to water it down. So, you know, you definitely had the Klan that was intermingled with the police department. There's truth to that. And when you look at the laws, what are hate crimes, right? They're federal crimes. Why? Because what was said in the movie, it's like, they're not going to prosecute. Yeah. What do? They suspend the sentence. And in the movie, the judge goes, well, I understand why you did this here. So here's your sentence, but it's suspended.
We're being invaded.
It's not being carried out. And they call it outside influences. Yeah. So there's a great scene where, you know, Gene Hackman, who he plays like that tough, rugged, little bit of a bastard, you know, tough figure. He was a Marine at the end of World War II. And, you know, he had a hard life. And I think he took some of that in terms of some of his own acting, right? He is kind of sticking it to the chief of police, the mayor, and the mayor was Arlie Emery, right? Yeah. So he goes, you know, baseball's the only sport where a black man could wave a stick and not start a riot, right? And then he does one of these winks, and, you know, because I'll be seeing you around. And it's like one of those things where it was a good cop, bad cop. Yeah. Right? William Dafoe's has to keep Gene Hackman's character in line and so on. But that's the interesting thing. It had to be federal crime. State crime, they weren't prosecuting. So there's a lot of truth to that resentment, that hatred, you know. And why do a lot of blacks move up here during World War I and World War II? Because they had enough of the sharecropping and tenant farming and only being able to go so far within that society. It tough, very, very tough existence, you know. And my first podcast here was Frank Tepedino, the baseball player. He went in for Hank Aaron after he broke the Babes record. Yeah. Right? What was that, 1974? They had to get him off the field. Right? That you had Secret Service on the field, dressed up as an umpire. They had to get him off the field. That's 20 years after Brown, literally 20 years after Brown versus Board of Education.
Wow.
So it doesn't happen overnight. So there's a lot of truth to that movie. Was there some Hollywood? Yeah. But there was a lot of truth to that movie. Just that resentment, that hatred, unwilling to bend, right? So
how did you feel about Remember the Titans?
all right, so Remember the Titans is going to be about 10 years after in terms of Mississippi Burning, right? Yeah. So Mississippi Burning is going to be 10 years after Brown versus Board of Education. So you could kind of see the progress with the civil rights movement, right? Yeah. So it's a Walt Disney movie. Mm-hmm. You have Denzel Washington, who is going to be from Mount Vernon. Mm-hmm. So he's a young African-American black man who's going to see the remnants of the civil rights movement, of desegregation, of schools redistricting, their lines, which we see here on Long Island, right? Mm-hmm. And, he was a very good athlete. He played football at Fordham.
Denzel?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And when you look at Denzel Washington, he looks like he's always in good shape. Mm-hmm. He's a physical guy. I think that's part of his acting is like, I guess he's considered like a realist actor, so he could kind of take something that's occurring or something within history. Like we spoke about Glory. Yeah. Right? You see Tripp fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And he's very physical. He's a physical guy, So he plays Coach Herman Boone, and it's the two schools that are coming together to desegregating. Mm-hmm. They're not redistricting the lines itself there. So you see him with the very hard task of taking the black football player and the white football player that doesn't necessarily like or understand each other, bringing them together. They go to camp at Gettysburg, which is very interesting because he's going to use the Gettysburg Address, right, after they're done running. And they said, listen, we're fighting this now, and we're going to end up wrecking each other. There's got to be some sort of common ground. Right? Mm-hmm. And you see that where they're sitting and eating lunch, and was it Gary Bertier goes, hey, this is a defense table. You go over there to his buddy, and it's black and white ball players, right? Mm-hmm. That is the intermingling, right? That's something that's extremely interesting. I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, with the first integrated male and females in the same barracks. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was a big deal. They kept an eye on you, and they expected certain things. Yeah. So it's a little bit different, but you kind of saw that in terms of the genders, right? It was a big deal. So when you look at, they win their first game, it's done kind of in a rough manner, right? Mm-hmm. But they're getting used to each other. And then you have Sunshine, California, he's a dreamboat. He's the California kid. He's doing judo or something in front of the school. Like, they don't really understand him, right? So what ends up happening was he goes, we're going to party on here, and we're going to go into this restaurant. And then the black ball players go, listen, this is Virginia. They don't really like us down here. That's all changed. That's all recent history. So you see the manager owner come out with the big mutton chops on the side, right? And he goes, well, if you want to eat, you go around the back and they'll serve you back there. And then Sunshine goes, well, there's open tables right here. So now the black ball players are embarrassed, humiliated. They get thrown out and out on the street. He goes, you don't understand. This is the way it is here. So then you see a little bit of that divide, right? So the film is Disney. It's like a feel-good movie, whereas Mississippi Burning is anything but a feel-good movie. And it hits you between the eyes in terms of how bad it was in the Deep South, whereas this is a little bit later. And, I think they do a good job. There's a lot of teachable parts within both films. And you see the differences between Gene Hackman, right, and William Dafoe. And then you see the differences between the white and black coaches and how they look at things, right? But how they had to be receptive to each other if they were going to get anything done.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take, right? It's you look at things differently. I look at things differently. Your background's different. My background's different. And then you throw race in there at a time, where the civil rights movement is still going on. That's 10 years after the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 and 65 that's supposed to desegregate everything. And it's still taking time.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, Rich, again, I love this. I love this new segment, and I would like to keep it going. That's all the time we have for today's episode. However, this has been History Repeats on hmTV. I'm your host, Liam Carballal. Thanks, Rich. You want to do this again?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Right. Excellent. All right. Till next time.